there is Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder claiming that he had a broken arm during the fights with Joseph Parker and Zhang, but didn't realize it. Okay, in case you guys didn't read along, this is what he stated. He said, I broke my arm way back in November sometime. I didn't know. I had 2 tears on my shoulder. I could feel the pain, but I just thought it was old injuries. But I got an MRI recently and everything was effed up there. I didn't know because I have a high tolerance of pain. Let me counterpunch. Now you guys see why I miss Deontay Wilder so much. You know what I mean? I mean, these type of things come about, and it's always something that sounds so, excused. I had a broken arm during his fights. First off, okay, let me counterpunch. Did he have a broken arm, or did he have 2 tears? Or did he have both? Because it seems to me like he said, well, I had a broken arm during Joseph Parker and Zhang and didn't realize it. It's like, okay, if you don't realize your own pain factor, that means you wouldn't have been knocked out. You would have took whoever gave you and kept coming. Which, to be fair, he didn't go down against Joseph Parker, but, Joseph Parker rocked his bell. You know what I mean? His high sense of tolerance of pain or whatever, it's crazy. Second, what kind of inspection, right, that he has before the fight? You know what I mean? I mean, he had to pass those. Where was his arm broken? Broken arm and 2 tears are 2 different things. He needs to learn the anatomy, the jargon of what he's talking about. My autopsy said. Autopsy, that means you're dead. Bars. Okay, that's for one. So we heard that back then, and people were like, I'm not taking you seriously. You don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And then now it's like, all right, now you're saying I broke my arm way back in November sometime. How did you do that? When did you know you broke your arm in November? You know what I mean? Because it was hurting, And I didn't know I had 2 tears in my shoulder. I broke my arm way back in November. So it's crazy. See, normally if you had a broken arm and 2 tears, that would mean, okay, well, those are 2 different injuries. Here he says, I broke my arm way back in November sometime and didn't know. I had 2 tears on my shoulder. I think he probably meant one or the other. You know what I mean? So because if it was a broken arm, where's the break? Is it fractured? Or was it broken? Or was it tears? Or was it all? Because if it was all, he would have said, this is how it should have been worded. I broke my arm way back in November sometime, and I didn't know. And I had 2 tears as well on my shoulder. Okay. And another thing, your shoulder is here. Your arm is here. You say, man, I broke my arm. That's your shoulder, not your arm. You know what I mean? Those are 2 different things. So when you're talking about and you're talking to people and you want people to actually believe that shit, you would tell them what actually happened or what the doctor told you so you can tell your story from what the doctor explained to you. Use his jargon to explain. Let me give you an example. I don't say, okay, I broke my leg when I was 5. True story. True story. I was running across the street and bow, truck ran right over me. True story. I was 5 years old. And then what was the diagnosis? I lived, obviously, thank God. But what was the verdict? I had a compound fracture of the left leg. Okay. That's coming from the doctor. If you would have asked me that, I would have said I broke my leg in 2 places. You know what I mean? But that's how I would explain it. But normally when you get it from a doctor, the doctor would tell you just the way I told you guys. I had a compound fracture, right? A compound fracture in the left leg. You see what I'm saying? I broke my arm way back in November. I didn't know. I had 2 tears on my shoulder. I could feel the pain. They're like, okay, another thing, if you could feel the pain, why weren't you concerned about the pain that you felt in 2 fights? Okay, so if you felt it in November, that was before he fought Joseph Parker, to be fair. Okay, and, hey, man, I felt pain in that. We didn't hear anything then. You know what I mean, about that. He just said, I felt pain. You got beat by Parker. Then you fought Zhang and got beat by Zhang. Now you recently had an MRI and you have 2 tears, but you thought they were old injuries. Okay, so I guess now you are taking the time to repair the tears because that needs surgery. Ask Lomachenko about that shit. Lomachenko had you showing that somebody was picking in his skin, picking out the stitches in his skin, and people still didn't believe his ass. You know what I mean? But I bet you top dollar somebody's gonna fall for this shit. I knew something was wrong with Wilder. But this man can't tell you either it was a shoulder injury or a broken arm. Was it 2 tears to the shoulder? Was it a broken arm? Because it sounds like you don't know which one from the other. Because he's not verifying if it's both or not. That's the type of stuff that we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, for one, look at Malik Scott for a minute. Were you in that heavy love that you couldn't understand? Like, you know what? Wilder said he had a tear in his, not a tear. He said that his arm was hurt. Man, we may need to check that out. You know what I mean? Did he keep it from everybody that whole time? Was it just because he didn't feel it as much because of the effects from the ayahuasca? You know what I mean? So, but the thing is, if he told or informed anybody about it, not saying he did because he didn't specify in this article, but if he told someone about these injuries or injury or whatever it was, right, the tear or the broken arm, they would have said, you know what, being who they supposed to be, like Malik Scott, they would have said, man, you need to check that out. Because I can't have you, injured and trying to train and prepare for a fight that you may go in there and lose your life or alter something else. Now, if he would have said, oh, well, I did it after the fight or it happened during the fight, that's two different things. But what I say is to Deontay Wilder, okay, because I'm not done. Oh, no. What I say to him, show us the MRI. Because we're tired of hearing shit about what he did and what someone said, and I have evidence and I have documents. Show us that shit. Let's stop that. Because you, of all people, you need to be held accountable and you need evidence. Evidence that this happened. Because you said you had evidence about Tyson Fury cheating you from A to Z. Mountains of evidence. And we haven't had one sheet of paper proving, describing how and where and when Tyson Fury cheated you. And I'm going to leave you guys with this, okay? This one last thing. I broke my arm way back in November sometime. I didn't know. Specifics are very important, people. Specifics. Which arm? Which arm did you break? Which arm was broken? Tell me which one. Because normally, like I told you, when I was five, I got ran over by a truck. True story. Right hand to God. Right? I could bring my aunt in here and she'll tell you. Yeah, that happened. We had to carry him around and everything. Had a cast all the way up to here. Yeah, that happened. Right? Which leg? Left. Didn't I say compound fracture to the left leg? Yes. This man said I broke my arm. No, that's unbelievable by itself, because you're not saying, man, my right arm, my left arm. And that's very important for a man that's one-handed, because if it was left arm, if it was his left, you know, I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with your power. But if it's your right, you could claim and say, hey, you know what? Man, it was broken. I could feel the pain. And that's why the that right hand snap didn't have the snap or that power that it used to have, because when I throw it, I would wince in pain and I could feel it. But I got a high tolerance because I'm so tough, right? He could have used that. But he's not saying either one. Oh, it's just, I broke my arm way back in November. Which one? You got two arms. So if you broke something, you're more specific to detail than this shit. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Deontay Wilder stating that he broke his arm or tore his shoulder in 2 places. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.